Hello and welcome to Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. I am delighted to be joined today by Fintech royalty in Mr. Steve Grob. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Toby. And I've never been called Fintech royalty before, but I'll take that.
Listen, it's really good to speak to you again. You've launched a new business in the back end of last year, Vision57. Fascinating sort of change from what you've been doing before. You know, long time. Director of strategy over at Fidesz, going over to CMO at Ion after the takeover. Tell us a little bit about the story.
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty simple, Toby. As you said, I spent 15 years at Fidesz. That was a fantastic training ground to learn how to scale technology businesses in our industry. I mean, it was also, happened to be great fun as well. I worked with some of the smartest guys in the industry. And, when I left, I thought long and hard about what was happening in our industry. And two things really stood out to me. One was that in the years since the last financial crisis, the GFC in 2007-8, the world of technology has just zoomed past in the fast lane. And so many participants in capital markets have built up this huge technology debt whilst they've been making all their systems compliant with all the regulations, MiFID, Dodd-Frank, etc. And at the same time, the world has changed, and the way we use technology in our everyday lives, we expect everything to interoperate and work together. And so I started to think about how you would connect some of those firms with capital markets. And that's really the idea behind Vision57. It's a pathfinder company that, helps fintechs break through the noise, because there's plenty of them, and position themselves appropriately and find customers. And at the same time, also working with capital market participants to help them find the right technologies for, to develop and digitalize their businesses.
Yeah, I think that you touched on something really interesting there, because noise is exactly the word at the moment. I mean, the traffic is increasing at ever increasing rates at the moment, isn't it? So fast, and how much everyone's jumping onto LinkedIn, jumping onto Twitter, and there's a huge increase in volume. Tell us about how people can stand out. What sort of excellence are you seeing in innovative approaches are you looking at out there at the moment?
I think that's a great question, and for me, it comes down to kind of going back to the basics a little bit. Incidentally, a friend of mine at LinkedIn told me that I think traffic has now doubled on LinkedIn, which kind of gives you a sense of what that level of noise that there is. But when you think about whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, all these things were originated to allow me as an individual to reach out and have a one-to-many conversation with my peers. And so clearly the power of that was taken up by the B2C marketing world and more recently the B2B world. But that's the crucial word. It's it's a conversation. And I think that's what everyone misses, because the big part of being a good conversationalist is listening and not shouting. And I think the mistake everyone makes is to say, let's just shout louder than the other guy. And I think that's the worst thing that you can do. And in fact, one of the firms that I work with that, in fact, I used to use at Fidesz in the social media space. They're called Social Tree Global, and they absolutely get that. And the first thing I learned from them is they said, Steve, before you put anything out on social media, start listening. Understand where your brand fits on social compared to your competitors, your customers, the user groups, the regulators, the exchanges. And only when you've done your fair share of listening can you then start to engage with the audience in a two-way conversation. And if you look at the firms that get that right, they stand out hugely from the ones that think, if I just blat out more and more stuff, I'm going to be successful. And I think the other answer to your question, Toby, is in terms of what not to do, when, I see in my Twitter feed people showing me pictures of some fancy bottle of wine they've decided to drink, as part of their COVID lockdown. I just think, come on, get out of it. You're so out of touch. You're so tone deaf with the reality of what's going on. And at the same time, if I get an email from a company I've never heard of saying, hey, dear Steve, we hope you and your family are okay in the current environment. Again, I just think, you don't know me, you don't care about me. So I think, listening is important, but it also talks to the importance of brand. And, one of the other things in this world of social outreach is the interconnection between the company's brand and the personal brand. And again, I think that's something firms find sometimes quite tricky, is, how does a company have a voice in a world of social? And so they're very dependent on, their key spokespeople to deliver messages. And, it annoys me when CEOs say, oh, I'm too busy to spend my time doing blogs or reaching out on social. I mean, you wouldn't say I'm too busy doing my job to talk to customers, or I'm too busy doing my job to pay my staff. This is part of the world, mate, these days.
I think that's sort of that sort of social CEO. I think there's a book by Michelle Carville that's directly around that. It's become a really interesting sort of development, and I still see that this is, maybe it's because of technology, and in the tech world there are people there who are probably sometimes a little more reticent to put themselves in front of camera or to put themselves out there, to the masses. What do you see some of the sort of things that inhibit people within that space not to do that? I
think a lot of it is, to some extent, one of the, again, coming back to this point that it's about this, being prepared to have a conversation. So I think, a lot of times I see firms and they say, oh, I don't want to put that out. What if someone doesn't like it? Absolutely great. I mean, so some of the most brilliant conversations I've had with people is when people have come up to me and said, hey, Steve, I read what you wrote on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever, and I hated it. Because I think the opposite. I think this. And the most important thing is you've connected with someone. And then you have a conversation that says, oh, okay, well, maybe hate is a strong word, but, tell me your point of view. And when people have come to me and made good points or added to stuff I've written or videos I've done, I've been quick to say, thanks so much to Fred, who's made this great addition to what I was thinking. So I think it's the fear of wanting to be right. And the point about a conversation is it's just a dialogue between people. And I think that's what people have to overcome.
Yeah, I think that it's very clear from you and the blogs you write, and it's a very conversational sort of style. And I noticed that immediately you're getting back to people once they're commenting on that and engaging in the art of conversation, right? Which is where it all goes through. I've seen Lance Ugler over at IHS Market do a really good job of that recently as well, where he's putting stuff out there and will be very conversational with it.
It's the most flattering thing. I'm still amazed that someone actually bothers to read something that you write. And even more that they care enough about what you wrote to put a comment or ask a question. And so you owe it to whoever that is to respond to them.
Let's touch on that content creation, because I think that you've made a very accurate statement there that listening and temperature checking is the most important part of it there. Tell us what sort of things people should be listening to, because there'll be people there who are saying, I agree with that, and then not knowing actually what the sort of how to gather that information and how people should go about sort of getting the right content from what they're listening to and asking the right questions.
So I think and I've been lucky again being able to work with the guys at Social Tree, because they do it all for me for the companies I work for. So they set up a whole bunch of channels, and they produce a report every week that says compared to your peer group of competitors, this is the amount of output, which is less interesting. Here's the engagement per post, which is much more interesting. And so, you know, it's actually pretty simple. You know, everyone knows who their competitors are, who they think they're better than, who they think is worse than them. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows who their customers are. You know, and the great thing about LinkedIn, particularly for our industry, is pretty much everyone we want to talk to is on there. Mm-hmm. And so listening to them, I think another thing that some firms do incredibly well is kind of newsjacking, where, you know, there's an article in the FT or in the Trade or someone else's piece, and actually taking someone else's content and building your own point of view on top of that. Again, I think is incredibly powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, there's sort of 4 or 5 different things that you can be doing on social at the moment to do that, from generating your own to commenting to blog writing to newsjacking, as you say. I think it's really, and video obviously as well around that too. And it's interesting to see the companies who are sort of pushing themselves into that, and be very interesting to see the results for, you know, that come from.
And interestingly, I'm sure that there's probably some official stat, but what I've found is anything that goes out on video gets maybe 10 times the coverage and the eyeballs than the written word. You know, and the truth is, in today's world of Zoom, Google Hangouts, Teams, what have you, you can do this stuff incredibly cost effectively. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And, you know, you might see my dogs walking in and out in the background or whatever.
I've plenty of that.
But the thing I love about that is it humanizes every conversation. So all of a sudden, instead of being someone from a corporation talking to someone else representing another corporation, suddenly on all the Zoom calls that you're doing, you know, it's like through the keyhole, you're seeing a little bit about their lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, the number of times, you know, I've started conversations and it's gone on to, oh, that's an interesting picture on the wall. Where did you get that from? And, you know, whatever. And you know, we all know that the starting point to effective sales is empathy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's an element to kind of exposing yourself a little bit, you know, in terms of your life, which people never did before. And I think that's really cool. Really cool.
I guess that's I guess we know the answer to why you've got a sword above your head now.
Okay, so now you've asked. I've been fortunate in my job to have traveled all over the place, and I kind of made it a point to pick up different bits and pieces from around the world in different places I went to. So I won't take you through all the stories, but everything in this room has a story behind it.
I love it. And we said yesterday, this is your man cave, the one room you're able to decorate yourself. Right?
It was my one and only room in the house. Yeah.
We've all got those. I've got the downstairs toilet, unfortunately. So what can you do about that? Listen, I think coming back to this, there's you know, a lot there we can be talking about people winning the brand war, so to speak. But if you're looking at who's going to emerge successfully from this, there's going to be winners and losers, as there are in every sort of thing. And I wish everyone could be winners from this. And you know, there's an awful lot to adapt to, and it is, you know, it's such an unusual scenario that we're in, unique scenario that we're in many ways. From what you're looking at and seeing at the moment, and your experience, you know, for all the years that you've had looking at this sort of stuff and going through various corrections and downturns and such like, what's going to typify those businesses that are most successful from this?
So again, I think it's a great question, and you know, what's, you know, we've lived through a number of, you know, financial crises, you know, in our lives. But I think what makes this different is we've all been catapulted through a portal into the unknown. And there's kind of 2 points about that. One is there's no going back. But the second thing is, you know, I think the mistakes, you know, people make is they talk about arriving at some new normal. And I think that's completely wrong. There's not going to be a new normal. There's just, because it was so dislocated now, There's just going to be a succession of new normals as we emerge into something different. And so if you have that at the back of your mind, you start to think about which company is going to be successful. And I think they're typified by a number of things. The first is, firms that aren't about walking into a company and saying, you need to throw away what you've got and buy my thing. Because rip and replace was already hard, and I think it's going to become impossible. So I think firms that can augment what's already there are going to be in great shape. So, I mean, just to give you one example, there's a firm I work with called Glue42. Yeah. And what they do is they enable you to share context, say, between your Fidessa, your Bloomberg, your CRM system, your TCA system. So that's really cool anyway. But in today's world of a distributed workforce, where traders don't have the benefit of 7 screens around them, but are working from home on 1 or 2 screens, that's incredibly important. And another firm in a similar vein, based out of New York, is called Velox. And they do a slightly similar thing, but at perhaps a slightly deeper level, and enable you to connect all the disparate trading systems that you have and get one view of risk across everything that you're doing. And again, in today's world of high volume, high volatility, understanding in real time and being able to act is hugely important. And, it was summed up well. Someone said to me, we want to run our business like a nuclear reactor. If something's going wrong, I want to know right now. I don't want time lag metrics that tell me, oh, yesterday we blew up. I want to know tomorrow we're going to blow up. And so firms that can do that, I think firms above all though, that give market participants this kind of strategic agility, it's just going to be so important. So how can I react incredibly fast to something bad, or take advantage incredibly quickly of an opportunity? So again, just to give you one final example of that, a firm I work with called Rapid Addition, which actually isn't new, but is under new management, enable companies to take complete control of their fixed infrastructure. And what's cool about what they do is they can offer every single different sort of price, quality, latency, resilience point of view that you want. So now, instead of having one size fits all, you can have one infrastructure, but just deliver different client experiences. And you can turn these things on and off as you like. So I think it's about augmentation and strategic ability. And any firm that can help with that, I think, is going to be in great shape.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. There's businesses there who I often talk about this as to what investable businesses are, and when you look at which companies VCs go after, you're talking about things there which are absolutely on point with the companies who've really flown through over the last couple of years. It's businesses there who are adding genuine value, and aren't and a part of what I think is becoming a much more collaborative world, particularly in capital markets, right? It's always been very, very, very linear, very insular beforehand, and all of a sudden we're seeing so many different bits work together to create sort of super opportunities to get maximum efficiency from it. So I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. You're speaking to loads of different people at the moment as well. I guess you've never spoken to more people out there in the marketplace, I should imagine, and getting a real temperature check. When you're talking to founders, to leaders from small to large, what are some of the sort of common traits you're seeing that are keeping people up? Some of the concerns that you're hearing about at the moment.
So one thing that I thought was really interesting is a couple of the firms that I talk with or work with are very young, and they're run and owned by people that have never known anything but stock markets going up and life being good. And I remember one phone call I had with some guys, and they were like, "Steve, what are we going to do?" It was just so stark how shocked they were at the current situation. But I think actually it comes down to actually two things, and unfortunately for CEOs, they're contradictory. So the first is, in any times of great uncertainty, cash is always king. So cash flow, and how do you make sure that every penny you're spending is being spent sensibly? And that's kind of interesting, because without trade techs or fix events or business trips or whatever, firms are actually saving a lot of money. But the question now is, how do they refunnel that money sensibly into digital outreach that's highly effective? But I guess at the same time, as well as having that doubling down on cash flow, you've got to maintain the focus of your business. And this is the, perhaps the biggest failing that fintechs have, is that they just go on a sort of random walk from one project to another and end up with a dozen clients that they're doing different things for that that will never scale. And so the risk is always going to be, when cash is king, are you going to be disciplined enough to stick to your guns and say, well, actually, Mr. Customer, that's not what we could do that, but that's not what my company does. So I'm respectfully going to say no. And I think that's going to be the firms that can walk that line are going to be the successful ones. And I've done it myself, and it's very hard. It's very hard.
I think there's an interesting piece we're looking at here, because you touched on it there, the not having the fixtures of trade tech and the EMEA trading conference and all these sort of things there, which have traditionally become vital ingredients, particularly the sort of pub aspect of it all, in the cycle, the sales cycle. And we've got a lot of salespeople throughout the capital markets fintech world who have traditionally done a lot of old school selling, as we probably called it, and I think that's starting to evolve for years, and suddenly that's run out at 1,000 miles an hour, and there are people left with no answers as to how to get in front of people, or how to to hit the pub or what have you, to do their things, or to expense a lunch, or to do this sort of thing. They can't travel and get in front of the people. They can't do some of the demos that they've been doing before, or to do a load of these different things that have been so people centric. But now we're dealing with this into a different world. You mentioned there digital outreach, but there's still a lot of real skepticism, I think, particularly in capital markets, around how that works and whether it's the next in thing or actually something which can be really valuable. And there are companies there who get it and are really moving further forward with it. I'd probably put Steel Eye as a classic example of someone who's done it incredibly well with that, and their marketing team over there. Tell us a little bit about how people can work around losing that revenue stream of, as you say, cash is king, but also getting cash in is king, and how they can do that.
I think. I mean, you make a couple of good points there, Toby. I think one of the things that's really interesting in the current environment is we are going to see an intense period of economic Darwinism. And what's happening is we're seeing loads and loads of innovation. I mean, even my mum uses Zoom, right? So that goes to show just how ubiquitous.
Usually like this, though, isn't it?
Look up, Mum! Look up! Exactly. But we're going to see so much creativity in how people engage with each other, because there isn't the ability currently and for some time to do trade show. I mean, imagine trade tech being at the bar and you have to stay 2 meters apart from everyone. That's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So everyone is thinking very hard, and so what we're seeing is that what was probably going to happen anyway in terms of the development and the use of technologies and digital outreach and digital engagement is just going to accelerate. And so what's going to happen is where we would probably have gotten to in 10 years, we'll get to in 2. And people will try stuff and make mistakes and fix them. That's the nature of these things. So for example, I've been trying a few new projects for digital outreach. Some have been fantastically successful, others not so much. And, you learn from those, you move on and you say, hey, you know what, we tried. And I think the most important thing is not to be stuck in the headlights and just to keep trying, modifying, adapting, trying new ways, and not being afraid to fail. Because the beautiful thing about, doing a Zoom call like this, or, digital outreach, or publishing something on LinkedIn, is your cost of production, certainly your marginal cost of production, is almost zero. So why not try stuff? And in one sense, I'm incredibly excited that everything that, I tried to do at Fidessa and since then is actually accelerating into, a new world order where what was probably going to happen anyway is going to just happen much quicker. And I think that's pretty cool. Yeah,
no, I'd agree with that. I think I think one of the things we'll see will be a massive acceleration in marketing. I think sales and marketing have been two separate worlds a little bit, and they're starting to collide ever more. And that sort of marketing pipe for, really working closely with the sales side. And I think you see salespeople in capital markets generally becoming far better marketeers at the same sort of time. I think they're going to have to become a lot more well-rounded in that and embrace that technology with it as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's focus in on that a little bit. Look, you've worked in some giants of the FS space, technology space, and we've seen salespeople within there. You've had people who've been responsible for people who've gone out there to pitch that product. What would you be advising to people in that sort of role at the moment? How are they going to maximise their chances of winning business at the moment?
So again, I think that's a great question, and I came across something the other day that I think is quite a good answer to that question. So I'm sure you're familiar, having been to St. John's anyway, with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Yeah.
So just to remind everyone, it starts at the bottom with, I need food, air, then I need shelter, warmth.
Broadband as the extra one that comes into it.
and the point being is you move up into the top of the pyramid towards self-actualization.
Yeah.
But the point is that up until very recently, we were all at the top of that pyramid: self-actualization, delivering on my potential, etc. And suddenly, almost overnight, we plummeted to the bottom. And so I'm sat here thinking, maybe I have to dig my garden up and plant potatoes and keep chickens and whatever to feed my family. Life. Yeah. And everyone went through that. And so when you're reaching out to people, you've got to understand that people aren't at the top of that pyramid anymore. And depending upon what you're selling to whom and how disrupted their business is by current events, you need to have that empathy with the context of them. So coming back to what I said earlier, if you don't know somebody, don't ask how their family is, because it just comes across as crass and tone deaf. But if you do, and if you're an account manager, then reach out to all of your customers, particularly on Zoom, and learn more about them. And don't actually try and sell them anything at all, but have a Zoom call saying, hey, Toby, I thought I'd check in with you just to find out, how things were going. And if the opportunity presents itself, say, well, actually, as it happens, we've got a special promotion on that, or what have you. Yeah. But, never has empathy been more important than right now.
Yeah.
And so that would be the first thing that I would say. And the second thing I kind of hear a little bit is it okay to sell? There's a little bit of, should I really be ringing someone up saying, do you want to buy my latest techie, thingamajig? Maybe the guy on the other end of the phone has got his own or her own issues right now. And so I think, empathy is, as I said, is important. But it is okay, because like it or not, your customers are selling to their customers and your suppliers are selling to you. It's kind of the way of the world, as long as it's done respectfully. I think it's just fine. And perhaps the third part of the answer is, again, never has the human dimension been more important. I don't know about you, Toby, but I'm really looking forward to sitting in a pub with a pint in my hand and talking to people and engaging socially with people, in the way that we do as human beings, where you don't quite know where a conversation is going to go, or you're talking to the person next to you at the bar or wherever, and people want that kind of social engagement. And I actually think that people are actually way more receptive to respectful, empathetic engagement, and that's talking about new stuff that firms can do. So I think the answer probably lies somewhere in all of that. Yeah,
no, I absolutely agree, and I think it's so refreshing to see some of these things that people are doing. We hear a lot of that, whether people should be selling, whether people should be holding back at the moment or just doing it. But look, if you've got something there which provides a solution to a problem and you can pitch that, and I think empathy is absolutely the key word there. Striking the right tone and listening, everything that we've been talking about, I think can really help at the moment. With what you're doing right now, and I want to go back to Vision57 at the moment, because you've given so much value in what you've spoken about so far. With Vision57, tell us a little bit about the mission. What are you on a mission to do?
So that's a great question. And when I left Fidessa / Ion, I wasn't sure. But what I knew was, I always had an absolute passion for technology in this industry. And so I spent my summer last year, I didn't take a lot of time off, just researching firms, putting them all into all sorts of different categories. I came up with my own, categorization system for them. And really, I think I could sum it up in a sentence, which is, when you look at how we lead our everyday lives with technology, it's so, device independent, it's so mobile, it's so relevant, it's so delivering bite-sized chunks of highly digestible information. Why can't the trading world be like that? And I think it's when I see firms that talk to that and help solve that, those are the ones that really interest me. But the mission, such as it is to keep finding those firms and helping them be as successful as they can, based around the experience that I was lucky enough to pick up over 15 years at Fidessa.
Tell us about some of the value that you can bring. What sort of services are you doing for those businesses?
So it starts with everything from helping firms position themselves in terms of their strategy, and I think that's so many firms in our space have say, here's some great technology. Well, what does it do? Well, it can do anything. Well, that's your first mistake, because because in today's world there's so much noise. Everyone's got such tiny attention spans. If you put all the onus on your customer to understand my product and work out how it can help them, they just will give up. So the first thing that I spend my time doing is helping these firms really sharpen to a razor edge their business proposition. This is how we help these types of people solve this problem, and this is how we help them do it better than however they're doing it. And just getting that as simple and non-techy and as possible is the starting point. And then the second part is to craft the right kind of messaging that enables them to address different people in the buying cycle with how that core message is interpreted, whether you're the COO, the CTO, the CEO, the CFO, the trader on the desk, whomever. And then building out and delivering it. And I was, again, I've been lucky in my time to build up a reasonably good network of contacts. And it was funny because when I left Fidessa, I put a little LinkedIn thing out saying I'd left. Yeah, and I thought, you know, if I got 2,000, 3,000 views of it, I'd feel pretty good. And I ended up getting 52,000.
Did you? Wow.
And, you know, I mean, that's great. It doesn't pay any bills, right?
Yeah.
But it's great for the soul.
But it shows the power of the network, right?
And it shows the power of the network, exactly. And so working out, once you've got the message straight and you've got the audience straight, it's then simply about working out how you can amplify that to the right people. And you know, interestingly, in today's world, being able to do that digitally is you know, incredibly valuable expertise to have.
Yeah. Well, look, Steve, it's something I'm passionate about myself. I love that, you know, where you're positioned and what you're doing. And look, certainly from our perspective, when the guys are out there and seeing these sort of businesses, we'd love to put them in touch with you as well. I'm sure there'll be people who are watching it and hearing about this and thinking there's going to be value that you can add to them too. How do people get in touch with you?
So you can either hit me up on LinkedIn or just email me, steve@vision57.com.
I'm going to leave you with one last thing to do, which is to tell us the story behind Vision57 as a name.
Okay, so it's nothing to do with Heinz and 57 varieties. It came about, I was trying to think of the name for the firm.
Sometimes the hardest part of starting a company, isn't it?
Sometimes it is. And the Vision, some of you may know, is a Marvel superhero. And allegedly had great powers of communication over long distances. And he first appeared in episode 57 of the Avengers magazine. I actually have a copy on my wall over here that I have framed. And just to that came out in 1963, which was the year I was born. So I just thought, okay,
love that.
How could you not do that?
Love it. I love it. Well, listen, hopefully everyone would have enjoyed listening to this as much as I've enjoyed talking to you about it all. Really excited for what you're doing. I think there's always been great value that you've brought to the industry as a whole. Now to be able to sort of share that, you know, across everyone who can get in touch with you is going to be brilliant as well. So a brilliant episode. Thanks so much for getting involved in it and sharing your time with us all. And thank you to everyone for watching. Steve, thanks very much. And thank you to all for watching another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Cheers.
Thanks for having me, Toby. Cheers.